fact that you all are sitting here inviting us into this conversation as your inaugural episode this year, that is so key because they want us ignorant.
That's right.
They want us not just afraid, but they want us afraid of knowing better. So we've got to commit to understanding what's going on.
We've got to gird up. You've got to lean into your courage in this moment.
All our life we had to fight, and the ladies at this table today, they definitely have not only fought for themselves, but their people, our people, and us. This is the brand new season of Listen to Black Woman. I'm Lore'l, joined by my beautiful co-host, Jessie Woo.
Yes, it's your sister, Jessie Woo. And listen, today we are having a very important State of the Black Women's Union, okay? Considering where we are in this country, it is very, very important to address the things. And so here to address the things, we have the LaTosha Brown, and also we have the Stacey Abrams. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Good.
We're here.
Good. Listen, LaTosha, I know that you are an activist. You get the people going. You mobilize us. But I also know that you got some vocals. You be out here singing for our freedom.
Listen. Well, the first thing I did right was the day I started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize and hold on, hold on. That's a freedom song my grandmother used to sing.
That is so amazing. Thank you.
Y'all sound good together, okay? I know that's right, Jessie. Don't be trying to hide your talents either, okay?
That's right.
The harmony was right there.
Hello. Shout out to New Birth, okay?
So I do want to ask you ladies how you best describe the current political climate. How did we get here? Why are we so divided? I know that's a jam-packed question, but we need some answers.
So I would start with framing it with definitions. Authoritarianism simply means that you have a small group of people who decide that your personal liberties, personal freedoms are no longer relevant, and they want no accountability, they just want power. Democracy is the opposite. Democracy is that we have a collective contribution to society, and part of our intention is to protect individual freedoms and individual liberties, but that we have to sometimes share power. And where we are now is we are in the middle of an authoritarian regime. The head of that regime is called an autocrat, and the political ideology that's being espoused by this regime is fascism. So we hear all these words, but I think it's really important to level set. Authoritarianism is the style of government. Fascism is what they want to do with that government, and that is they want purity. They want racial purity. They want women to do what they want women to do, especially Black women, not to do things. They are very clear about a religious ethno-national state called Christian nationalism, but the intention is to achieve racial, religious, and gender identity purity by excising anything they find to be outside of their intention, which is why they went after DEI at the very beginning. Because DEI is the central pillar of a pluralistic democracy. Diversity means all people, equity means fair access to opportunity, and inclusion means respect for belonging. They don't like any of it. They don't care about the letters. It's not that they don't like the letters DEI. They don't like the mission. And the problem for them is that the work that we've done actually worked. We are a pluralistic democracy where Black women were thriving, so they got rid of a lot of us. Where communities were working together in coalitions, so they're trying to fracture us. And most importantly, we were making progress. They can count. They know in 17 years, this is a majority-minority country. That's right. And they will not be in the majority. And so rather than adopt a pluralism and a set of political beliefs and policies that serve us all, they're just trying to quash us all through authoritarianism. That's where we are.
And then just building on that, I think we have to also understand that this political climate has been manufactured. That part of what has happened is that there are those that want us to actually respond out of fear, to be constantly in a state of fear. And so they create chaos. So every day, day in after day out, right, there's some kind of executive order, there's some kind of attack, some kind of policy attack. And believe it or not, many of the executive orders, the president knows they won't stand, right? But it's to create this environment of fear so that people feel that there's this power that they can't come up against. And so we have to really recognize that in this moment, it is being manufactured in a way to keep us divided at each other, to keep us in a constant state of chaos and fear so that we're paralyzed and that we won't respond to what is happening right now.
Fascism is outside and it's loud. You talked about the steps that it took to get here. Do you mind reiterating those steps for all of us?
Not at all. So there are 10 steps. If you look at all of the literature and the history of authoritarianism, when a democracy becomes an autocracy, it takes 10 steps. The first one is you have an election. We elect our leaders, but that's the last election that's free and fair. Assuming this one was free and fair, but we'll talk about that later.
We don't believe that.
It was freer and fairer than anything we're going to see after.
That's right.
So that's first. The second is that you see the expansion of executive power. What LaTosha's referencing is you see executive orders, but you also see the firing of people without due process. You see the stationing of National Guard, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you see expansion of executive power, things the president's not supposed to do, the president starts to do. And in order to do that, step 3 is that you have to weaken competing powers. In a democracy, you have 3 branches of government: the executive, the judiciary, and the legislative. Well, you've got a Congress that's held captive by Republicans who refuse to do their jobs and are actually complicit in giving away our power. And you've got a judiciary, the Supreme Court, mostly, because the lower courts are actually trying their best. But you have a Supreme Court through a shadow docket and emergency rulings are basically suborning and aiding and abetting the executive overthrow of political power. Step 4 is that you gut government so it doesn't work. That's why they fired everybody.
Right.
Democracy works when it delivers. People need to see that they get something for sharing their power. They get something for paying their taxes.
That's right.
Well, if you gut government and it stops working, then people think, well, what's the point of voting? What's the point of having a government? We might as well let the dictator do it for us because, well, government doesn't work. That's why you fire everyone. And then step 5, you install loyalists. Once you've gotten rid of the people who know how to do the work, you got to put somebody there who will do the job you want done. That's why we have a podcaster in charge of the FBI. We have a dime store patent in charge of the Department of Defense. We've got a snake oil salesman in charge of Health and Human Services. We've got G.I. Joe Barbie in charge of Homeland Security. We have people in place that have no business with power, but they are there because they answer to one person and one ideology. And so they install loyalists, but it's also why they're coming after black women. It's why they came after Lisa Cook, because you need to replace the last vote that he can take on the Federal Reserve Board. And Lisa Cook, a black woman, is standing in his way, so he accuses her of something almost everyone in his cabinet apparently actually did, although she didn't do it. And so you install loyalists because you need to make certain that government is only responsive to the leader, not the people. Step 6, what you do next is you attack journalists, you attack the media, you attack anyone willing to speak up. And while we watched what happened with Jimmy Kimmel, not enough was said about what happened to Karen Attiah, a reporter at the Washington Post who had the audacity to point out that maybe it's a bad idea that we lionize someone who said deeply vile things about black women, about communities of color, about the LGBTQ plus community. But you also gut public media, so you can't get good information. And the reason you do that, and that goes to LaTosha's point about manufacturing, you gotta lie to people.
That's right.
You gotta manufacture the truth, and that means you need propaganda to fill the spaces. That's why Skydance and Paramount merged, so that they don't have to tell this truth anymore. That's why Larry Ellison and Oracle are trying to buy TikTok, because 33% of the population gets their news there.
That's right.
That's why Meta sold out and sold all of our data.
Right.
And so you're trying to attack truth by stopping truth from getting out there. Step 7, you go after DEI. You scapegoat the vulnerable. You scapegoat marginalized communities. You go after black women. 300,000 of them lose their jobs. You attack DEI, and your first wave of executive orders are all about how we don't want diversity anymore. They're not even hiding it. You make it safe to discriminate again. That's why they go after DEI. That's why they go after communities of color. Step 8, you make certain you go after any of the groups that actually protect the people. That's why you go after universities. You go after lawyers. It's why nonprofit organizations, because of it's called NSPM7, the National Security Presidential Memorandum. It just came out last week. Basically authorizes the president and the administration to go after any nonprofit it deems to be, domestic terrorist.
Oh my gosh.
And they define what that means.
Right.
And so the reason you do that is that you want to weaken the supports of civil service. You want to weaken the supports of civil society. We can't help each other if we're all fighting to stay alive. Then you get to step 9, you normalize violence. That's why we have the National Guard in Portland and in Chicago. We have military occupation of Washington, D.C. The threat of military occupation of Memphis. That's why you have the paramilitary rappelling out of helicopters in Chicago and zip tying black children and kidnapping immigrants and deporting people without due process. You do that because you want people to be so afraid of the might of the military that they are afraid to speak up, and dissent is quieted. And that gets you to step 10. When you've done all of that, you make certain there's never another election that changes the future. And the way you accomplish that is not that you cancel elections. Why bother? Maduro has elections in Venezuela. Putin has an election every 4 years.
Right.
You just make sure your people win. That's why Texas redrew the lines, because they want to manufacture outcomes. That's why they went after Representative Emmanuel Cleaver in Missouri. They want to make certain they can win. And in Georgia, you purge 470,000 voters because the margin of victory or loss has been 100,000 votes. So you make sure you make sure you cover the spread.
That's right.
You do all of that because with those 10 steps, once you've done them, you wash, rinse, repeat. You amp it up, but you never have to give up power because people are afraid, they are silenced, they are broken, they are broke.
Yeah.
And they believe that there's no point in fighting back. But I don't actually believe that's where it ends, so I'm gonna stop now and I'll come back. If those are the 10 steps to authoritarianism and autocracy, when we get back around to it, I'll tell you the 10 steps to freedom and power.
Okay.
Right.
We're gonna wrap it up
We
with that.
need that because the problem is, like, a lot of people are overwhelmed with the information because they may not know and they may feel like it's going over their head, but they're terrified about what's happening because they can't feed their families right now. They are losing their homes.
right.
So because we know we are the masses at the end of the day, what is it that we can even do? Like, what's step one? Because that's all of that, I understand and I receive it, but it's so overwhelming. You kind of feel defenseless and it makes you want to give up. That's the point, I believe, right? But we have to encourage people to do the opposite.
That's right.
You know, and I know that's why we so appreciate you ladies. You went door to door, you know, knocking on people's doors, bringing out friends to help you do so. You speak to our people, you pour into our people all the time. But what can we do as the person that's watching right now?
You know, I'll say, I want to level set. You know, I want people to recognize, we're going to say this moment, but I want to say, in 1965, I'm from Selma. I'm originally from Selma, Alabama. And on the Emmett Pettus Bridge, there were 600 people. Now, there were hundreds of churches, there were thousands of people that lived there, but there were 600 people. They didn't have government on their side, they didn't have a political party on their side. Matter of fact, the president was telling them that, no, just wait, this isn't the time, right? But those 600 people, what was it that made those 600 people go on that bridge and say, and literally stand for their humanity? It wasn't just about the right to vote. We put it in this context around, people are fighting for the right to vote. Yes, that's true, but it really is around them asserting their agency of their humanity, and ultimately that they were going to stand up to protect themselves, their lives, and their children. We have to actually really adopt that kind of mindset. At this point, we have to understand that organized people is organized power. Part of what happens when we organize our money, some of us, we call that a boycott, right? We can change markets by organizing our money. We can change the minds of folks who are in positions of power by the way that we direct our resources. When we organize our votes, what does that mean? We can actually make a determination of who is in office, and we can take some folks out of office that need to be taken out of office. When we organize our time and our communities, then we can create a front line that can provide some protection for us. So in this moment, what I need people to understand is this ain't the moment to not pay attention, right? You gotta wake up. Like, this is the moment that you need to be paying attention, that every aspect of our lives are being attacked right now. So what does that mean? One, that means you need to fortify yourself. What does that mean in terms of fortifying ourselves right now? Part of that may mean that my grandmother, I'm from the Deep South, and my grandmother would always have this little pocket of money. She would actually put money, I don't know about y'all, just say, right down in the bosom, what she would say, right? And part of that, and she would always keep cash in the house. Now, we all have our debit cards and our credit cards and this plastic, but she would often talk about they would keep money in the house so that anytime something happened, she called it her emergency stash. I think people really need to fundamentally think about how they fortify themselves around, one, having a little cash so that you always have some cash. And don't say that your cards won't go down, because I don't know if people remember in 2024, right before the election, Bank of America went down for about 8 hours.
Oh my God, that's
you remember?
so
Yeah.
And people didn't have access to their cards. So I think that you should start thinking in that way of how you protect your families, having some cash, having your papers, having, if you've got your guardianship for your children, your medical information, you should have that stuff. I'm not raising this out of fear, it's around preparation. When you prepare, you're being proactive. I think it's also important in this moment that it's not about, when we're looking at elections and voting, we have to use every single tool available to us to resist. We've got to see our vote as a part of resistance. That collectively, part of the reason why we've seen voter suppression, part of why we've seen it in this space, particularly in Georgia, because this sister right here, part of it, people saw that there was an effort, that there was a multiracial coalition, a multi-generational coalition. What we start seeing voter suppression on steroids, right? And I'm saying that because we have to recognize if you just gotta look, if you don't even understand all of it, you understand that if somebody is working this damn hard to take something from you, that it has some value.
mean something.
It gotta mean something. And so it's really important for us to think in that way. And then the last thing that I'll say, and we can, because I know we got a lot of questions, the last thing is I really need people to shift the way that we're seeing ourselves. I need black folks to shift, and black women in particular. Instead of us seeing ourselves just as citizens of this nation, I want you to shift. I want you to start seeing yourself as founders of a new nation, a nation that we desire and that we deserve. We have to be the mothers of the nation that we desire and we deserve. We're going to stop this because we don't have any choice. Our families will get harmed. Our children will get harmed. We've got to use every single tool available to us, right? We have gone through worse, right? But in this moment in our lifetime, we've not seen the kind of racialized terror that we're seeing.
Right.
That means we've got to get prepared. Right? We've got to actually support the front lines. There are organizations that are doing work. This is the moment, instead of giving these businesses, writing checks to businesses that don't care nothing about you, buying another pair of cute shoes, you should be writing a check to an organization on the front line that when you need help, or when you need somebody defending, or when you need somebody out in the streets making sure that we are resisting, that organization has support. So there's many things that we can do just right now.
They put their money behind their organizations, and it seems like that's what makes them more powerful, that we don't have the funding that they have.
We have to fund our fight, but it also is and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this as a person of faith, that, I was thinking about kind of fear, how they've been using fear, right? And I went to the scriptures one day, I even got overwhelmed, and I got overwhelmed. I think it's normal for us to feel fear in the face of uncertainty, right? But it's also, fear is a prerequisite to courage. So this is the moment that folks need to, sisters, we've got to gird up. You've got to lean into your courage in this moment. And as I looked at scriptures say that perfect love drives out all fear. We have to love each other and our communities and our institutions like we have never loved anything before. This is the moment, y'all, we gotta go in.
Let me ask you this, because I like how you said we all have to tap in more into our communities and love our communities. These ICE raids, it shows how it's not just a black immigrant or a brown immigrant issue. It's an issue for us all. I'm Haitian American, and I remember back in the summer when the raids were hitting in LA, I was like, man, this is all of our issues. So many people are like, well, no, that's for the immigrants. What say you to folks who still don't grasp that this is an issue for us all?
So that's one of the reasons I created the 10 steps to freedom and power, and I think LaTosha articulated it perfectly. The goal is fear, the response is courage.
That's right.
But the first step is we got to recognize. So that's why I went through the very long litany of the 10 things to look for. And if you go to 10stepscampaign.org, we lay it out for you, and you can see it because they want us to be overwhelmed by it. But one thing to think about, for example, when it comes to immigration, they started with Hispanic immigrants because they spent so many years demonizing them. But they were coming for everyone. They came for Haitian immigrants. They came for anyone from the diaspora. But then they layered on top of it. When the Supreme Court allowed the emergency docket to say that they can now use race and language as a predicate for arresting you without due process, that means us. What they've said is that if you are of color and you speak an accent that they don't recognize, they can now take you. So being a citizen doesn't make you safe. Ask anybody who lived in that apartment building in Chicago.
Right.
That's right.
Being safe doesn't protect you.
That's right.
Being black, being brown puts you in danger because they are mad about the 1965 Immigration and Nationalization Act that said that more than people from Europe could come to the United States. And they've been angry about it ever since. They've also been angry about the Voting Rights Act.
They mad about everything.
They're mad at everything.
They just mad about everything.
And
angry.
one of the reasons and that's one of the reasons I talk about DEI. We think about DEI as a boring seminar or as how black and brown people got into school. What they mean by DEI, what I mean by DEI, is that's the entire legal infrastructure in this country that made access to power possible. 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, those are all DEI laws. The Americans with Disabilities Act, DEI law. Family Medical Leave Act. The fact that women can give birth and come back to work is a DEI law. The fact that you can take care of your families is a DEI law. Labor laws are DEI laws because when labor laws went into place, poor people could get what they needed at work. So we've got to remember when they are anti-DEI, they talk about black folks because it's the fastest way to get people on their side. But what they mean is they're coming for everybody.
That's right.
But if we know that, then the 10 steps to freedom and power, and this is where I get back to immigration as part of it. Our first job is to commit. We got to commit to knowing what's happening. What LaTosha laid out, the fact that you all are sitting here inviting us into this conversation as your inaugural episode this year, that is so key because they want us ignorant.
That's right.
They want us not just afraid, but they want us afraid of knowing better. Yeah. So we've got to commit to understanding what's going on. Our second one is that we have to share. Everybody who watches this needs to make sure everybody else they know watches this.
That's right.
And you need to annoy your friends. They need to be irritated. They need to know when they see your name pop up, they're about to learn something they didn't want to know because you know that that's the only way they survive. Number 3, they need to organize. And organizing doesn't mean, look, what LaTosha does, what I do, we organize on the scale that's a little bit bigger. Organizing means getting 2 friends and somebody you maybe don't like that much, but you care about their humanity, so you're gonna bring them in. But organizing just means more than you knowing what's going on. And once you've organized, then you mobilize. That's when you make sure that everyone in that circle has that prep book that she just talked about, but also that you all are doing the work in the community, that you know that your school down the street, even if none of you have kids there, that because of the cuts that came through the mega bill that Republicans passed, children are not being fed. Their SNAP benefits are getting cut. So when they go home from school on Friday, they will not eat again till Monday. So you organize yourselves to say, we're gonna show people that government works because before we had money, before we had power, we had each other. And so we're gonna put backpacks together and we're gonna meet them at the steps of the school and we're gonna hand them these backpacks so that they and their families can eat over the weekend and these children can come back and learn when they get back to school on Monday. We need to do number 5, we need to litigate. When she says give money, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund did not win every lawsuit. But when Thurgood Marshall finally won, we got the right to go to school. We got the right to be full citizens. We're going to lose a lot of cases, but we have to fight the law. And we've got to show that we are still in this. We have to then, 2 of my favorites, we have to disrupt.
That's right.
I know that's your favorite.
That's my favorite.
Disrupt means we don't let them tell us how our citizenship should be felt.
That's right.
We can protest. We can hand out Know Your Rights cards. The best way to fight back against ICE is to know your rights, to film everything.
That's right.
Make them snatch the phone out of your hands and do some risk assessments, make sure you can afford to get it replaced or that you have insurance. But do what you need to do to disrupt their overuse of power and then deny them. So disrupt and then deny. They try to change our language. I talk about DEI all the time because I will not let you seize from me my language and my heritage. I'm not going to make you tell me I'm not who I am. And so we have to deny them the ability to shift our understanding of ourselves. We have to be as true to ourselves today as we were yesterday and even louder about it the next day. Then, once you've disrupted and denied, we've got to engage. People talk about immigration. And most of us think, well, if I call my U.S. representative and they don't do something, I gotta be quiet. No, immigration affects schools.
Yeah.
You need to be asking at your school board meetings, what are you all doing to protect the children in your care? You need to go to city council meetings and say, are you complying? Because there is no legal requirement that local governments comply with ICE. You need to be at the county level saying, I'm paying you my taxes. I want my roads fixed before you decide you're gonna pick up my friends and incarcerate them in a jail. And then your state legislators who have so much power, they need to know that you are watching them. You've got to engage. And if they won't do what you say, you need to bring them ideas about what to do. Because then we get to elections. That's step 9. Step 9 is we've got elections in Georgia this year. We've got 53,000 elections across this country. 53,000 times this year, we get to tell people we see you and we refuse to be silent. Even if you don't care about the election, show up anyway. There's nothing more terrifying to a politician than somebody knowing who they are. I was one. And I'll tell you, politicians are like 15-year-olds. We respond to money, peer pressure, and attention.
Good.
So if you show up and we participate in these elections at levels they've never seen, even if you don't think it's going to change anything, it will change their minds about how much work they still have to do. Because step 10, and this is what you alluded to about being the mothers of the new you, we need to demand the government we deserve.
That's right.
We have spent so much time trying to protect the little we had, we forgot to ask for more.
Absolutely.
And we get mollified by tiny little things. We wouldn't be in this position if the government we had was doing the work it needed to do. So we've got to recognize, we've got to activate, and we've got to build. And when we do those 3 things, that's how we get the democracy we deserve. That's how we get the futures we deserve.
You know, I noticed that when it comes to black women in politics, it ends up being a little difficult when they try to deem us the sister girl like they're doing right now with Jasmine Crockett, saying, oh, the home girl, like always trying to attack. Or even when it comes to, I'll even go to the flip side and say Candace Owens. Her points are never valid just because it's kind of, oh, she's an ignorant black. I feel like they do that a lot and they tend to make that a narrative. I know you've been a part of historic moments. I know you've been a part of historic. How did y'all work through when those comments got thrown at you, especially when it's so much racial tension going on in the world today? Like, how did you navigate that?
You know, I think black women, and even to your point with immigrants, I want to just I want to lift up black women and say, I so love black women.
Yes.
You know, I so love sisters. And I'm saying that because, you know, I got early on when some of the ICE raids, I was getting phone calls, and one of the phone calls were about teachers. There were a group of black teachers, women teachers in North Carolina and Texas that refused. They had already had them a plan. They were already having a plan like, you're not coming in here getting these kids. Now, I ain't got nothing to do with what you got to do, but you're not getting my kids. And so taking that kind of leadership, we always change the trajectory when we take that kind of leadership. And so for me, I'm sitting here as a black woman that I'm able to get on an airplane and move however I move. I'm able to buy a house wherever I want to buy a house. I'm able to get paid for the work that I did. The people before me, my great-great-grandmother, didn't have that opportunity. My grandmother, who raised me, did not get to vote until my mother's last year in high school, right? So at the end, and I'm saying that because for me, it's around the past, the present, and the future. The past part of how could I have the audacity? It's interesting because I saw Cardi B do an interview of who I love, did an interview where she was talking about working pregnant and that her grandmother and her mother worked pregnant. So who was she to say that she couldn't work? And so there's a part of me that feels that same thing. I feel an obligation, I feel a responsibility I'm so proud to be in a long legacy of black women who resisted, a long legacy of black women, people like Harriet Tubman. At the end of the day, this is a sister that could not read, that could not write, but she had so much courage in her heart. She was so clear about her vision and so much love for her people and for freedom that she continuously put herself, she had a $50,000 bounty on her head. $50,000 is a lot of money now. So you can imagine back then how much money it was. You understand? No, don't do it.
Not that.
Right, but the point being that at the end of the day, we come from a legacy. It is in our veins. It is in our blood. We come from a legacy of resistance. Why? Because our survival depended on it. We sit uniquely at the intersection of gender and race. And what we're seeing right now being weaponized by these folks, right, what I call them the anti-humans, right, because they obviously don't like human beings with all of the policy that they're doing, the kind of policies that they're doing, is that we sit uniquely in that space, and our survival we've had to build a muscle that we will challenge. We will challenge white patriarchy in ways that other folks don't challenge it. We will challenge even white Christian nationalism in ways, what I call Confederate Christianity, in ways. And so you're seeing courageous sisters like LaTosha James right now, who is under attack because for doing her job, right? For somebody who doesn't want to do their job. Like, they couldn't even find anybody. So you got to find a person who hasn't even litigated, right, to bring some trumped up charges against this sister who is like literally doing her job. That's why you see here at Fonnie Willis, you got sisters that are willing to actually take on what other people are not willing to take on, because we have survived by really standing in that space of, if we don't fight, then who's gonna fight? Like, at the end of the day, you're not gonna come for me, you're not gonna come for my communities, and we're not going to respond. And so I think we've built a muscle of that over time. And so for me, I'm leaning on the past of being a part of a legacy. I'm leaning on the present, where my grandchildren, where the people that I love are being threatened right now, and their safety is being threatened. What else can I do but fight? Right? At the end of the day, even a duck got enough sense to take care of his ducklings. So if you come for me and mine, I'm coming back for you, right? And so we've got to organize in that way. And then for the future, I always think of myself as a futurist. I'm always asking myself, and when I go places, I always ask these two questions. I always ask, what would America look like without racism? And no matter where I go in this country, I will ask people that question, and I will ask, my second question is, how many of you all have ever been asked that question before? 99% of the people in the room have not been asked that question. If we are not imagining and envisioning, right, what this world would look like without racism, it will never be. So I don't know about everybody else, but racism ain't my birthright. That is not my inheritance, and I'm not gonna believe that it has to be the truth. Something that I know has been deeply harmful and hurtful, just like it was created, it can be unraveled. And some of us, for me, I feel honored that God would put me in a position where I would have the freedom that I could fight, that I would have the support system that I could fight, that I would have the insight and the care in my heart to fight, and the passion to love people. So that's part of why I do the work that I do.
Ooh, that was so powerful.
This year, we had over 300,000 Black women lose their jobs, be forced out of the workforce. I mean, that's just what that's who's accounted for. How do you all feel that we can do something to help that? Like, what systems do we need to create? How do we battle that?
And so I think that goes back again to the reason for the 10 steps. So again, we got to commit to understanding why it happened. A lot of those were women who were employed by the federal government, because the federal government has held to the highest standards of non-discrimination. To your point, your question about what does the world look like without racism? Well, the federal government got as close as we've gotten in this country, because it has the strongest protections against racism and sexism in the nation. And it worked. Black women held jobs that they were qualified for, they were the leaders of. And we're talking scientists at the CDC. We're talking about people at the State Department who were protecting other nations. They fired Black women first. And the reason they did that was because they think that Black women are emblematic of the worst excesses of this nation, pluralism, that race and gender and sexual identity did not matter when it came to being able to do a job. That's why they got rid of Black women first. And when you saw all of the anti-DEI language out there, what they meant was it's okay to fire Black women again. The first wave of anti-DEI, irrespective of what their job actually was, they were the victims, because they knew that if they got rid of Black women first, they would be the least likely to be defended. So our first job is to commit to understanding why they did it. Second job is to share what we know about it, and now it's time to organize. those black women are they still have to pay their rent.
That's right.
They still have to take care of their children. They are looking for jobs. So we need to be in conversation about how we can help. We need to be offering them opportunities. But we also go to church with them. We go to school with them. We go, I don't go to the gym as often as I should, but we are in the gym with them. We need to, wherever we are and we know they are, ask, how can I help?
Yeah.
That's right.
Our most important job in this moment is to ask, how can I help? And then actually listen to the answer. Because sometimes instead of buying that next bag or buying those shoes or buying that coffee, you're going to quietly slip somebody a little bit of money to get them through. I remember what it was like when I needed $5.
Yes, I do
When
too.
I found a magic 20 and thought that the world had opened up.
That's right.
Willy Wonka had nothing on that $20 bill. We have families that are in desperate need, so we need to ask, how can I help? And we need to use our institutions. If you're part of a faith community, your faith community needs to be quietly asking, who is in need right now? I'm going to bring one more data point in. The Trump administration and Republicans destroyed 94 million pounds of food this year instead of letting it go to food banks. They also made it now, it's no longer the practice of this government to track hunger and food insecurity. So they created food insecurity. They slashed the money for SNAP. They slashed the money for WIC. WIC is going to run out in a couple of weeks.
That's right.
And they will no longer track it. The reason you do that is, again, to break our will.
That's right.
But they only break our will if we decide that they are the only ones who can help. Our job is to find out which food banks need what, because the reason they destroyed that food was it was protein. It was vegetables.
Yeah.
It was the stuff that people needed to be who they needed to become.
Yeah.
We can do that. The Black Panthers started food programs. The reason we have the food programs we have was the Black Panthers. It was families in Philadelphia who could not get ambulances to pick them up, who created the EMT, the emergency medical technician. We have EMTs in this country because Black people had to solve problems that folks created because they didn't want to help us. We didn't lose that muscle memory. We didn't lose that capacity. But we now have technology, we have resources, and we have knowledge that we didn't have. And so the way we help those Black women and help the families they support and the communities they are a part of is by not waiting for government to fix itself. We fix the problem and make government fix itself as part of that. But we can't wait, well, when government comes back, well, no, we do it now because that's the only way we build the government and the communities we deserve.
That's right. There are three things that are, just to add to our point, that I'll just say. I think that we need to push. We need to continue to push because we're paying taxes. As long as we're paying taxes, right, we should demand of local, state, and federal government. Not rely on it, to Stacey's point, but we should push. Secondly, we need to be prepared to protest. We can't take this sitting down. We've got to be prepared and organize ourselves to protest. The third thing, I'm going to say this to the women, the sisters who have been impacted, we got to pivot. That at the end of the day, you've got skills, and we've got to find in this kind of market, and many of our businesses, we've got to create opportunities for us to be able to absorb some of these women. These are highly skilled, very intelligent sisters that we can actually use to build some of the institutions and other spaces that we have. So it's real important for us to actually, the sisters, we're saying to you, we need you. If you're one of those sisters, we need you. There's space for you, and your community needs you. We need builders.
So during the last campaign, I actually got a chance to canvass, and I went door to door in different neighborhoods and talking to certain people. And it was shocking to me to see how they really didn't think their vote mattered. Nothing that happened in government affected them. It's a lot of misinformation also on social media, online. There's no checks and balances. So where would you advise somebody who's just completely lost, right? They're like, local elections, what does that mean? Where would you advise them to go from the start, just from step one? Say you know absolutely nothing. Some people don't. You know, some people have never voted before, right? They might know who you are, they've seen your face, but they're like, I don't even know the steps. What would you tell them to do?
Go to 10stepscampaign.org. So we have all of these. So the reason I created this is for resources. If you're trying to find a way to solve a problem in the middle of a battle, you are going to get overwhelmed and you're probably going to get hurt. And so part of the mission I have is that you've got extraordinary organizations like Black Voters Matter, like Fair Fight, Fair Count. You've got Democracy Forward. You've got all of these organizations doing this work, but people don't know what to look for. and we cannot trust the AI models to tell us.
Right.
And so 10stepscampaign.org, we are populating it every day with new resources and new places to go. But let's start with just why you should care about elections. People may not be into politics, but politics is into you, and it is a stalker.
That's right.
And the reason we have such disinformation is that as long as people don't believe there's a solution, they don't feel that it's worth risking the hope of trying to find an answer. I don't believe in voter apathy. I believe in voter despair. People are so overwhelmed by the inaction of government. And so government has to deliver. Electors have to do the jobs they get hired to do. And as LaTosha said, and if they won't do the jobs, hire somebody else. But in those intermediate steps, our first responsibility is to help people connect the dots. That's the work that I try to do. I need you to know who was responsible for getting you what you needed, who should have done this work. But you have to believe that you're entitled to the benefit of your taxes. If you've bought a stick of gum, you have paid taxes, you have paid for service, and they should be serving you. But if you go to 10stepscampaign.org, we have a list of resources for every one of the steps I laid out where we're gonna help you. And we wanna hear from more people. We wanna connect, because it's not just the big organizations we know about, it's those middle-sized organizations, I call them grass stalks, and it's the grassroots organizations. They are doing the most work, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the information, they don't have the access. And so what I want to create is a place for all of these organizations to be accessible, but then to be connected to the knowledge we need so we can push, so we can pivot, so we can do the work we need to position ourselves for success. I forgot your third piece, so I tried to make up.
I'd like to talk about our voices in the media. You know, we saw what happened to Joy Reid, we saw what happened to Don Lemon and countless other Black folks within the media. Obviously, our voices are under attack. You talked about the merge with Paramount and Skydance. Like, it's very intentional what this administration is doing to suppress our voices in the media. Again, as the public, what do we do to support Black voices in the media, and how do we fight a system that is suppressing us?
Well, number one, all of those companies say, there's one aspect of this that we could talk about, yes, what the administration is doing, but we're not letting these companies off. They're gonna have to be responsible as well. At the end of the day, all of those companies are in business to do what? Make money, take their money. You take their money by not watching them, by not supporting them, by pulling. Just on, when Jimmy Kimmel, just on that alone, they lost millions and millions of dollars overnight, right? Just for people saying, starting to cancel their memberships. We've got to be disciplined. We've got to be far more disciplined, that we're recognizing that we've got to use every single tool for us, all of our power. So even in this process, I think there's a couple of things. One, we do need information, right? And there are people who are trusted messengers. We've got to be much more diligent around listening to trusted messengers. You can't just go by whatever you know that is on the internet that you saw on TikTok or you saw on Instagram and you're repeating that, when you know that there is an intentional campaign to provide misinformation and disinformation in our communities. So you got to get some trusted sources. Everybody should have a trusted source. I'm going to check at least 3 times. I'll go and check, and I was like, hear this, and I'll check these other people. I was like, okay, this must be true. So you need to make sure that you have trusted sources. Second thing is, we need independent Black media. That's just the truth. There are shows, Joy Reid, while she left MSNBC, she has her own show. And she is, and Don Lemon, I don't know if anybody's seen Don Lemon, but Don Lemon's so free.
Yes, he is.
Like, he does not, he said whatever he wants. He has a show. The State of the People actually has started, has a network that they've created as well. Roland Martin is the only Black media company podcast that is actually in the top 100, right? He has over 2 million subscribers. Ultimately, we've got Black talkers who are credible, who have always brought us information and news. We should support them. Now, those platforms are not just going to go by themselves. They require people who are a cameraman. They require people who are actually putting the set together. So what does that mean? That means they need money. So instead of giving Disney or Hulu or those folks your money, particularly if they're going to be against DEI, if they're not going to support our communities, one of the things that we can do is actually support those independent Black platforms. The second thing I think we have to do is we also, as you're seeing many of us on social media, right? At any point you go in a room, we're all on our phones, right? we've got to start seeing the information we get not as for entertainment, right? But we have to be much more purposeful around it. That information that we know that is really critical, we need to be an organizer and send that out to 10 folks. It don't take you but a couple of seconds.
True.
Send the tips out, the 10 steps of authoritarianism. Send out what it is we have to do. We've got to use this space to really be able to get information, but information in such a way that we got to move beyond, you got to entertain me all the time.
Yeah.
It's okay to be entertained, right? And there's a lot of entertaining, fun things. I
Right.
scroll like everybody else. But in this moment, what you need is information. You need credible information. And we are going to have to demonstrate some discipline in a way that things that are not real, like we've got to throw that to the junk pile and look for credible sources and support independent Black media.
I'm going to add very quickly. The call to action is find 3 voices that you trust, subscribe. Don't just listen to
That's
them.
right.
Subscribe. If you're on Substack, pay them. It's $5 a month. Pay them, so subscribe and select the paid version, not the free version. You've got Contraband Camp with Michael Harriot. You've got all of these options, but if there's someone that you like, subscribe and pay them. When you are sharing, it is important that you not only like and share, you got to do it because that's what the algorithms then lift up.
That's right.
So I have a podcast, I have a Substack, Assembly Required, Assembly Notes, but on both of those places, I say every time, I need you to like, share, and comment because the way you get into the algorithm is not just that we look at it, it's that we engage with it. And that engagement matters. And everyone watching your show needs to tell everybody they watch the show. And they need to share it, and they need to remind people when you're on and when they want to hear from you again. We are passive consumers of information, and they know that, which is why it's easy to flood us with misinformation. And I want to lift up Onyx Impact. It's run by a young Black woman named Asosa Osa. She is an expert in disinformation targeted at Black people. So go to Onyx Impact. She actually created an AI chatbot called Aisha. And it's like the digital green book. It is amazing.
It is amazing.
It gives us information that is curated for the Black community. It doesn't exclude anyone, but it says, I'm going to start with the lens of my lived experience and help you with yours. We've got to lift these things up and we've got to know, but it's not enough to want to do it. We've got to make it part of our daily habit. So if you're doing step 2, which is share, that means every week on Friday, you need to send out to your organizer, the little group you've organized, they need to know, oh man, she's here with me again today. But do that work because that's how people build the muscle memory. They start with irritation, but they move into acceptance, and then they start replication. If we want to build networks of support and success, we've got to start with our intention to not just be consumers.
That's right.
We've got to be activators. We've got to be curators. That's what the other side does. They are relentless. They have money, not because they have more money than we do, but because they have organized their money to support their mission. We have to do the same, but that means we've got to take the small steps and the intermediate steps to get to the big mountains that actually move things.
And we much more fun and cool.
Exactly.
Like, listen, we got all the
our
culture.
all the
Listen,
time.
we got all this
Culture,
rich
literally,
culture.
yes.
Like,
Look at this
listen,
table.
Yes.
you can't out-be creative.
Come
guys.
on.
Come on
You
now.
cannot.
Right.
But one thing I do want to bring up, and to me, I feel like this is something, not to point fingers or the blame, because I feel like when you divide, obviously that's when you conquer, right? But a big part of the people that I know was not going for Kamala, let's just talk about that whole situation, it wasn't us. It wasn't the Black women that wasn't going out and voting. Honestly, I spoke to a lot of Black men, and they were not going out to vote.
Statistics tell us that most Black men that voted did vote for Kamala.
Exactly.
Well, I'm talking about people like now on radio, I have a lot of people that call in, and they made it very, very clear that they were never going to vote for Kamala ever, is what they said. They said they'd take anyone over her.
So I will say this. So having experienced this myself, I can speak from a place of both power and information. Okay. Sexism is absolutely real in every community. Racism is absolutely real. But let's look at the data. And what the data says is that Black men support Black women. Black women support Black women the most.
Yeah.
But the next highest support system,
everybody is
Black men.
Black men.
Now, a lot of folks who call in to tell you what they are going to do weren't planning to do anything anyway.
They didn't vote at all.
And
That
so
part.
we need to remember that disinformation often comes by planting people in our communities
That's right.
to fracture our belief systems. Black men voted for me at the same rate they voted for Raphael Warnock.
That's
but
right.
if you heard the news, black men couldn't stand me, and that is designed to fracture our communities. I think it is so important that you raise that, because one of the misinformation points is that they leverage our inherent mistrust of systems
That's right.
to convince us that we don't have the support that we need.
That's right.
My responsibility is to never let them tell me that my brothers don't love me as much as my sisters do.
Amen.
That's right.
But the other reality is that when they do those exit polls, you gotta remember, we are 13% of the population. How exactly are you finding a representative sample when you're only talking to 1 or 2 people in every state? They then extrapolate from that in ways that shape narratives but defy math.
That's right.
And so we can't let them tell us who we are. But my point is, what you did last time is not going to predict what you do next time. And in this crisis, in this moment, we need to be focused on how are we serving black men, black women, black boys, black girls, and how are we building coalition communities outside of our race? Because we are 13%. There aren't enough of us to save everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there are enough of us to do so much. And so I work in coalition. I believe there's a phrase, it's, do you go for belief first and then belonging, or belonging first and then belief? Too often we say you have to believe what I believe to belong to where I am. And that's why we lose people. I believe you need to belong. Come on in, and then I'll work on your belief. My parents are pastors. I can work on conversion later, but I need you to come in. And so even if there are black men who are rabidly disposed against voting for black women, let's ask why. Let's understand what's motivating that animus. Let's figure out if they've been convinced that black women's assent means their demise. And let's fracture that misunderstanding. But we can't get there if what we do is allow them to tell us things that aren't true, because those barriers get taller and taller and thicker and thicker. And I want to celebrate you raising that point, because this is a community that needs to have that conversation, because they're talking at us and not to us, and we've got to talk with each other.
That's right.
I love that. So do you think that there is a chance, an opportunity that there would be a black woman in office as the head of state?
77 million people voted for that man. 75 million people
right.
voted for her. It wasn't even 2 million, it was 1.5 million. 90 million people didn't vote.
That's right.
And that 90 million people didn't vote because they didn't think their voices mattered. They didn't think voting mattered. And they are now living the consequences. Our opportunity in this crisis is not only to navigate our way through the authoritarian regime, it is to build the community that LaTosha talked about. If we want to build the beloved community, there is no better time to do that than in service.
That's right.
When we help each other, we start to remember, oh yeah, I did like you. Or maybe my hatred was misplaced.
Yeah.
Our opportunity in this moment is to get to the next election and the election after that. And every time, use that to build trust, to build information, to build knowledge, but also to build ambition. We deserve more, and this is how we get there.
Do you see yourself running again?
I do. I don't know for what. So, you are not making any news on this show. Right now, I'm 10stepscampaign.org trying to save democracy.
Right.
We can talk about the rest of it if we have
When we
elections.
get there.
What about
Nice try.
Right. What about the future leaders? Like, what message would you have for anybody that knows that they have a voice, they know that they have something to say, they know they want to speak up for our people, but they may be a little hesitant? What's something that you might say to them?
You know, part of when I always think of, when I talk to candidates, anytime I talk to candidates, I always ask them to tell me kind of their background. Not the work they did, I want to know who you with. Like my grandmother, when you would come in the house, she would say, who your folks are, right? I want to know who their folks are, right? I want to know that if you are running for office, right, that service is not just about you getting a position. I want to know that you actually have some life, some commitment to service. And so ultimately, when I am the young people who are thinking about, or anybody that's thinking about running, I think serve now. You don't have to wait till you get in office. If you want to change education, it's a great opportunity for you to work on that right now. If you want to actually make sure you're strengthening democracy, then do that work now. Put your boots on the ground and dig in. And I think part of what will happen is you're able to build your network. You're able to build your support system, and you won't even have to ask. If you're doing what you're supposed to do, right, people will come up to you and tell you, I want you to run for office. Have you thought about running for office? We need you on this school board. I don't think you wait for that, because I think women oftentimes wait till somebody gives us permission to run. I think your service, that you decide that this is what you want to do, right? And then you go do the work to prepare to serve. And in preparing to serve, you build the muscle by serving. You listen to people. Instead of you coming, when a candidate comes to my community, you're going to come to my community and you just going to talk all the time? Like, how you know what we working with? I look at candidates that can come to my community and can listen, have the discipline to listen to people, so whatever that they're running on is being shaped by the people that they're saying that they want to represent. Because it's not your seat. You're not running for a seat. You're running to represent people, and you happen to be in a political seat. So I would encourage the folks right now, I think we need to challenge every single seat. Every single seat that is right now, from the constable on up to the president, we should be running for every single seat, if nothing else, but to organize our people, to get our issues out there, to develop a platform that's really in conjunction with people, and to really be able to fill the leadership pipeline. So this isn't the moment. I don't think that we should think of this moment as politics as usual. That's over with. We're in a whole different reality. And in this era, in this reality, what I believe is, I believe that you have to be relentless. You have to be relentless about, I'm going to make sure that my community takes power. And if I decide, or I believe that I can serve, I'm going to go do the work to serve. I'm going to go talk to folks so I know what I'm talking about, that I understand my platform. I'm going to start doing the work around helping to raise money. You're going to have to raise money for your campaign. So in this moment, start raising money for organizations like Fair Fight and Black Voters Matter and others, right? You can start really getting in the practice of that, and then put yourself out there. Start putting yourself out there, but be connected to a group. I am very, very suspect of folks who are not connected to any organization. You ain't got no church, you ain't got no organization. You just jumped up today and said you're gonna run, huh?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think it's really important for us to and part of the reason is because folks who run in a space and they have a circle, they are making themselves accountable. Right? We have too many people who run for office who don't feel like they're accountable to anybody. Right? Somebody told them, God told me to run. Well, he ain't tell the rest of these folks that you wanted to run. Right? And if he did, are you talking to them? Right? And so I think we've got to be a little bit more discerning, and in this moment, to not see running for office as some political popularity contest. We have to really see that running for office is really in being service of advancing our community and moving us forward. And who you are now is who you will be in office. So if you're not doing work for the community now, that's who you will be in you're in office, unless you build that muscle. If you're not able, and I think there's oftentimes to take the opportunity to speak out. This is a prime opportunity. The ground is wide open. The field is wide open for people to really put themselves in a place of leadership. And if you seek to run for office, and that's one of the vehicles of where you can express your leadership, then your community will support you. If you take care of your community will take care of you.
I know you all, both of you are just always busy, you know, advocating for us, but can you kind of speak to how you all take care of yourselves? I don't know, that just sat in my spirit. I just feel like you guys fight so hard for us, and we love you and we appreciate you, but how do you love on yourself? How do you advocate for yourselves?
So Dwight D. Eisenhower, the former president, had this quadrant system. He said there are things that are important and urgent, things that are important but not urgent, things that are urgent but not important, and things that are neither urgent nor important. The work we are doing is important and urgent, and we feel that. The way we strategize, the way we organize, figuring that out is important. It's not always urgent, because it's got to take some deep thought. You've got to do research. You've got to really sit there. But most of our time is taken up with things that are urgent but not important. Something somebody else forgot to do, and they want us to fix it for them, or something we forgot to do and we just don't want anyone to notice. But it's busy work. Things that feel urgent because somebody's calling you, texting you, emailing you, and it consumes so much of our energy. And then when we finally get to not important and not urgent, we feel guilty because we're like, well, there's something urgent that I should have done, something important that I haven't thought about, and the world's on fire, and that's important and urgent. I go to not important and not urgent for renewal. That's where I watch television. That's where I read books that I love. That's where I watch movies I want to watch. That's where I listen to music that makes me happy. I do not believe in guilty pleasure. I feel nothing, I feel no guilt about giving myself a respite and having the ability, because that's where you can renew, that's where you can sit, and you create the space that you can move through the urgent and say, no, that's not my job. I'm sorry, this is gonna hurt you for a minute, but next week, neither of us will remember what this is. I move over to the important things that I need to be researching, the books I need to read, the analysis I need to do, because the important and urgent work is always waiting for me, and I can get back there if I make sure I take some time in things that are not important and not urgent.
I love that.
I do too. You know, I tried to use the quadrants. Matter of fact, my executive coach tried to give me the quadrants, and I just messed all of that up. I just got to get back on track. But I will say, I've had to learn the hard way. You know, I was dealing with a health issue about 3 years ago, and I kept putting it off. It was, oh, it's an election, we got stuff to do. And then last year, it was like, oh, it's an election, we got stuff to do. You know, and this year, I was kind of forced to deal with it. And what happened in that moment is, what was really interesting is I was forced to be quiet. I was forced to be still. I had to actually have surgery, and I was forced to just be still for a minute. And this is the height of just fascism, just government gone wild, right? And I learned a really valuable lesson. Like, the lesson that I learned is, I will die and this world will keep going forward, right? But there are people who depend on me, who love me, my family, my kids. Like, there are people who really, that I love, that I want to spend time with. And so it was a real moment for me around thinking about how special it is that taking care of myself is also a part of taking care of me, taking care of those I love. But ultimately, I've got to love me first. I've got to think in ways, and I think so many of us have been taught that we're supposed to be the sacrificial lamb for everybody else. We're supposed to take care of the partner, or the children, or the family, or the organization.
Especially as Black women.
Especially as Black women. And I would say one thing, but the truth of the matter is I would do something else, right? And you know, it dawned on me in that space around how important it was for me to take care of me, and I like me. So I'm like, well, I need to spend a little time with me. And so I wound up reading, Howard Thurman is a theologian and a philosopher that actually Dr. King followed, and he talked about contemplation, how important it is to be contemplative. And so I would spend time, now I actually go out and I spend time in nature. I go out, I get grounded, I'm surrounded by trees and water, and I just kind of surrender myself in this space. And I'm like, wait a minute, like this tree, I'm looking at this beauty of this tree. This tree didn't have to do anything but surrender to be who it is, right? This water have to do anything but just surrender to be who it is. So what I need to do is I need to get grounded and just surrender to who I am, who I choose to be, and how I choose to express that in the world. And so one way for me is around really taking time to slow down and be still, like be still and know that there is a larger force and a source that is working, and so that I get clarity. When I get clarity, I move much differently. The second thing I do is I've gotten obsessed with this series Andor. I've watched it. Andor is a Star Wars. It is.
Oh, I like Star Wars.
Okay, so I'll say this. I am not a Star Wars
You're not a
person.
Star-
I'm Star Trek.
I don't do that either.
No, but here's the thing. So Andor is less about Star Wars or Star
Yes.
Trek and more about really extraordinary storytelling that helps us understand the current moment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It is amazing. And I've watched it twice.
Yeah.
So I have been just obsessed with watching like Andor, and listen, I got a notebook where I'm sitting there, I was like, yeah. So I've been watching these shows and they've been giving me joy. And the other thing, I write songs. So I've been doing a lot of writing lately, like writing my thoughts and put them down. I think it's really important for us, this space too, to really saturate ourselves in love. Sometimes I have a love day, and that day I'm loving on me, right? I am the things that make me feel loved and make me feel whole and make me feel amplified for myself. I'll give my own self a fashion show in my closet just because I feel like it, right? I might try on a new wig or some new earrings, or, you know what I'm saying? Right, like
Love
girl,
me a new wig now.
listen now.
Love me a new wig.
Like take the time, and so for me it is really being called back into myself. And the last thing I'll say is prayer has worked for me tremendously. Right, it has worked, like centering myself in such a way that I surrender to there's a larger force, there's a larger source that I'm pulling from, has calmed me and grounded me in ways that I can't explain. Like it's grounded me in ways that affirm who I am. It's grounded me in ways to remind me, right, that at the end of the day, this too shall pass. And at the end of the day, it also reminds me that at the end of the day, baby, we ain't going nowhere. So they might as well just go, get used to this. That not only are we not going anywhere, but we are going to make the America. We're going to make the nation that we desire and we deserve. If we got to drag them kicking and screaming and hollering, the bottom line is we will create that what we see. And so we've got to clear our minds so that we can have a vision. So for me, a lot of my time is being in a space that I can clear my mind so I can have a clear vision of what's next.
I remember a saying that it used to be like, don't talk about politics or religion at the dinner table. Right now it seems like everybody, you don't have a choice but to talk about
Better
politics.
be talking about it.
Oh yeah,
How do y'all
I
feel?
lost friends this last election.
Yeah, and how do y'all feel when artists get involved in the conversation and they start doing the interviews? When it was like, I believe it was Cardi B who sat down with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, I believe, and a lot of people gave her backlash. Do you think that should be encouraged, more people asking questions, or should it be somebody that's more informed?
We're all entitled not just to our opinions, but to engagement.
That's right.
Mahalia Jackson
That's right.
stood on stage with Martin Luther King.
Nina Simone.
Nina Simone, that
Nina
you
Simone.
took it from
Oh,
Nina Simone.
yeah.
Art creates culture.
That's right.
Culture is upstream of politics. And what that means is that how we see ourselves in community dictates the kind of community we let our politics design. And so if we aren't involved at the cultural level, then the politics we have is devoid of meaning and purpose. I love when people tell us who they are, because I want to know that your art reflects our values, and it doesn't have to be in absolute agreement. I don't believe in agreement. I believe in alignment. And when artists are willing to share their beliefs, when they're willing to share their citizenship, when they're willing to share their humanity, that tells me that I'm not alone. Because for the people who don't think they're into politics, that's the moment of entry for them. Zach Bryan, the country music artist, who just put out a song about ICE that is extraordinary, is making a lot of people mad because they thought that
He would.
Right.
Bad
thought he
Bunny
was a maggot.
is making me happy every day.
Yeah.
And when artists, Beyonce,
That's right.
Let's all,
Come on.
when
Because I'm in the
artists,
beehive. I just want y'all to know.
right.
when artists are willing to live their values, we know that their art reflects it. When actors are willing to ask, when I apologize for mispronouncing your last name, but when she had a question asked of her
I remember
colleagues,
that.
That's
yes.
right.
when they had to look at her and she was like, excuse me, you mean me?
Right.
When we are willing to own our space, we can change conversation. And when art changes conversation, the world changes.
Yeah.
And so that's our responsibility. So I celebrate. Look, I write novels. I just had a novel come out, Coded Justice.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I kill a lot of people in my books. It's very cathartic.
Maybe that's what I need to do. I need to write some books and kill some
there you
people.
go.
Oh,
But
okay then.
okay, sorry. So this one, it's called Coded Justice, and it's a story about AI, DEI, and veterans healthcare. And it came out right before the orange occupant decided that he was going to say you can't use DEI in training AI models. And the reason I raise this is that when I was out doing my book tour, that's when I started talking about the 10 steps. I was on Jimmy Kimmel to talk about coded justice because I wanted people to understand AI. I wanted them to believe that they had the right to that knowledge. That as an artist, part of my responsibility is to translate complicated policy into accessible, entertaining knowledge. And it was in that space I was asked about how do we fight back against authoritarianism. I do not see a distinction between those things. We're told to pick a lane. I picked a freeway. And I want artists to believe that they exist on that freeway, that they are citizens, that they are humans, that they are culture builders, but they're also protectorates. And part of their responsibility is to give us a safe space to go where we need to be entertained, but when we come out, we've got to give them a safe space to be who they need to be a part of this community.
Do you feel like we backed Colin Kaepernick like we were supposed to? Because in a way, they said that he sacrificed his career in order to speak up and stand up.
We did as much as we could. None of us owned a team, so we could only do so much.
Because I would have gave him a job.
Exactly. but we watched his documentaries and we support. And that's the thing. And we keep his name in our mouths.
We do.
And that's part of it. When they win, it's when we go silent. Complicity is the deepest demon because it's worse than just getting by. It's when we decide we're not entitled to more. You can't demand more when you decide that you've gotten all you're going to get and you should be grateful for it. I haven't gotten all we deserve. We haven't gotten the nation we need. And my responsibility is to do whatever we can. I don't want anyone to take risks they can't afford, but risk assessment is different than risk aversion. Risk aversion says, I'm not gonna do anything because it might not work and it might hurt me. Risk assessment says, this is how much I can afford and I'm gonna do as much of it as I can. Because we don't all have to do the same thing, but in this moment, we all have to do something. And if we are willing to do something, we get the world we deserve.
Well, what you're saying that some people have views as a Democrat, some people have views as a Republican, but we all black, right? How can we get together and figure out how to put that division aside for us to move forward?
Alignment, not agreement. If we are aligned on needing a democracy, we can fight over who gets to be in charge of it once we have it. Agreement says that we have to believe the same thing to get there. Alignment says we have to have the same destination for different reasons. And once we get there, then we can fight it out. And yes, I want Democrats to win, but I want democracy to win first.
And then let me say this. I think that we also got to move away from, we are letting these folks manufacture a reality like we're in a big Super Bowl game, that you got the red team and you got the blue team. The truth of the matter is I'm on a human being team. That's who I'm on the team. And I am going to support whoever best make sure that my interests are protected. And so we've got to get beyond this idea and this frame of political identity based on party affiliation or whatever. At the end of the day, we're going to be strategic. Black folks in this country have been extremely strategic around how we've actually used our vote, how we've participated in the process. Many of us have known the limitations of politics. That's just the truth. And that ain't something new that we know, right? But at the end of the day, we have been very methodical, I think, around understanding that as a minority that is important for us to have a collective voice, that collectively is when we are at our greatest. And so in this moment, I think we cannot allow the other side, these other folks who I call the anti-humans, to set the tone and the narrative around putting people in boxes. At the end of the day, my question for you is, are you supporting health care? Right? My question for you is, are you supporting, make sure that people are getting paid a fair wage? My question to you, are you supporting to make sure that we have fair housing laws? If you are not supporting those things, I'm just not down with you. There's nothing you can say to me. I don't need to be novel and be different just to be different. I want power. This isn't about parties. This isn't about just politics. This is about raw power. And we've got to really understand that this is about power. Who has power and the decision-making power to make policies that are going to impact every aspect of our lives? Because there's nothing in your life that is not impacted by policy. You can't even die, and your folks will get the insurance without that being impacted. That's impacted by public policy. So you might not be in the voting, but like Sister Stacey said, voting is in you, right? That somebody's going to win. Somebody is going to win. And so it is best for you to align yourself with where can you get the most to advance your community. And if you don't see the kind of candidates that are out there that you want to run, then that may be the time for you to either recruit or prepare yourself to run. But at the end of the day, it is not good enough to say that I'm not going to engage because they're going to do what they want to do. That is the point. The point is for you not to engage, for them to do exactly what they want to do.
Well, I want to thank you both so much.
Yes.
I mean, we feel like I feel so empowered by hearing all the things that you guys had to say. Moving forward, how do we support you both?
So I'll start, 10stepscampaign.org, in case you heard me mention it. But please follow me on Assembly Required is my podcast, and Assembly Notes is my Substack. And if you read, just look me up. I've got 17 books. I've got kids' books. I've got nonfiction. I got romance novels, legal thrillers. You like it, I write it. Let's get together.
Look, let me write this down because you told me I could say what I want on radio,
That's right.
so I might gotta go work for you.
Hey.
I love it.
So I'm going to ask people, you can follow me, Miss LaTosha Brown, on all social media platforms, and my organization, support my organization, blackvotersmatterfund.org. We got a number of things that we're doing right now. There is a critical case that is going before the Supreme Court that, quite frankly, we've been working with in partnership with Fair Fight to really amplify that this particular case can be the end of the Voting Rights Act. It's the stripping out Section 2, which allows that's really for the sake of time, that's really the part in the Voting Rights Act that allows the districts to be drawn in such a way that communities of color and minority communities can be competitive, can have representation. And so if the Supreme Court takes that Section 2 out of the Voting Rights Act or strikes it down, that can lead up to 25 to 30% of black representation in the South gone. We're talking about 18 to 20 seats. And we're looking forward to, and it just doesn't stop there. It can go on, it will go on different levels. And so you can find out more about that by going to our website, blackvotersmatterfund.org. You can find out about some of the things that we're doing around putting pressure in the campaigns. You know, I want to lift up the sisters. I want to lift up Tamika Mallory and Nina Turner and Jamal Bryant, Dr. And right now, we've got to actually make sure that we are using our economic power. And I'm actually working on something, so check me out, called Blackout Week. So what we're going to do is we're going to use, instead of Black Friday, we're going to be blackout. We're going to black out that week, and we're going to put some economic pressure on folks who don't stand with us. We're not standing with you. We're not going to spend our dollars with folks who work against us. We will spend our time with our families and our friends and with businesses that honor us and honor our dollars.
Yes. That's amazing. Thank you, ladies, for all the work you do for us, for the community, and we're just honored to have you on the show today.
I just want to say thank you for having this conversation. This is the moment where we need your voices lifting this up for people who may not see themselves in this space. I just want to express my gratitude, and I think LaTosha joins me. This kind of conversation matters, so thank you both so much for being so thoughtful.
Listen to Black women.